food, energy, and water. He grew up on a farm right here in Iowa, which is operated and managed by him and his brother, and the remainder of all of his endeavors and businesses that he's worked for, I told him I'd let him continue introducing himself. So let's give a hand for Al, and yeah.
Zoe, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. I'm going to see if I can make this work. You did turn it on. She didn't trust me. She knows technically challenged. I'm going to jump down here because I can walk around and talk to you all and kind of walk through these things. So first of all, thank you for being here today. And if this really goes poorly, it's all Zoe's fault, just so you know, because she's the one who put the seminars together and she's the one who invited me. So Zoe, if it goes poorly, it's all on you. I'm going to start this way. This is where I start with everything. I do have a long history in the pork industry. I'm going to talk about that a little bit as it's applicable. But really what I want to focus on is that I don't work for anybody. I work for myself, and so I'm not picking sides in this presentation today. I'm not trying to make any judgments today. I'm just simply trying to provide information for you to think about how you have to think about positioning your industry and your future and in your operations as we go forward. So it's a really important piece of the puzzle, I think. And you're going to see this presentation, and you're going to say, geez, he's really negative. And it's not to be negative. I'm trying to tell you the reality of the situation as I see it. I spent about 45 years in Washington, D.C. I can't say I'm really proud of that, but I can tell you that I did. I worked on Capitol Hill, worked for the corn industry, was one of their senior lobbyists, did a lot of their trade work, worked for you as well. Worked for the National Pork Producers Council for 10 years and ran the Washington offices as well as ran all of your international trade programs and ultimately was the CEO for a number of years. But I come to this trying to talk about it in the context of what you're going to face. And I think it's really important for us to think about it in those terms. And I'll try to bring some other information into the conversation. But the way to think about this as you start this is that as you sit here today, you're living history. You are absolutely, unequivocally in the very front row of history. I'm not sure it's good history, but it's history. And you need to think about it that way because how you go forward from here is going to be critically important. Second piece is that I've talked about agriculture being at an inflection point in the past, and I can tell you right now that it's never been truer than today. And if you don't know what an inflection point is, look it up. Very valuable piece of information, but it's at that point where we're going to go somewhere else. It's going to be dramatic. And I can tell you right now, we are in the midst of an unprecedented pivot with regard to how the federal government, how the United States, and therefore agriculture is going to go forward. And I'm going to let you think about that a little bit, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how that's happening. But at the end of the day, you need to understand, we're going to talk about that we are in the midst of a new world order. Sounds really weird. Sounds really provocative. We are. And it affects everybody in this room. It affects American agriculture. It affects the pork industry. And what you need to think about is how we, the collective we here, manage that. Because everything we have done up until this point in time is going to change. It is changing, or it has already changed. The opportunity, though, is to think about what that change means then and how we're going to position ourselves accordingly. So with that, and some of these disclaimers, we're going to go forward. I'm also going to tell you another thing, is that things like the Farm Bill, we're never going to do another Farm Bill. We're never going to do another Farm Bill. Think about that. We're going to talk about why. So when Zoe asked me what the title was, I gave her this one. I like a lot of peas, so I gave a lot of peas. And, you have to come up with a bunch of stuff. But there's a lot of things in here that are really important. First and foremost, think about it from the perspective of the pork industry. I'm not going to talk a lot about pork today. I'm not, because it's your business, okay? I am going to talk a little bit about agriculture. I'm going to talk about the bigger issues. I'm going to talk a little bit about policy. I'm going to talk a lot about politics. And I'm going to talk a lot about populism. This is the thing that I start every presentation with. This is the balance of power. Most Americans don't realize it. When I was in Washington, D.C., when I worked on Capitol Hill, worked for the pork industry, worked for the corn industry, you have to be able to count votes. This is what this is about, counting votes, okay? So Senate's 53-47, House is 218-213. Really important to understand that in the House, there's no margin for error. You want to know why they can't get anything done? They can't lose one vote. Cannot lose one vote. So it's like, if you want to herd cats, be in the House of Representatives, okay? It is the worst frickin' job, be the Speaker of the House, the worst job in the history of the world. Anybody who wants it should be checked for something. Rabies, I don't know what it is. They got it. Pseudorabies, I don't know what they got. They got something. So, first of all, they hate each other, okay? Really do. There's 40 of them that are Freedom Caucus members. I'm not taking anything away from them, but they're the wild card in this mess, okay? They control a lot of the agenda, a lot of things that are happening. So it's very difficult to get things accomplished. It's a dysfunctional place. It's gotten really bad. You know that, I know that, they know that. They don't have a really good way of getting out of it. On the Senate side, you see that the Senate elections that are coming up decidedly in Republicans' favor. So it's really important to understand what's likely to happen coming up in this calendar year. This calendar year. The House is up for re-election. Odds are, midterm election of a president's second term, generally very painful for the president. Doesn't matter if Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. It's going to be very painful. As a rule, House is probably going to switch. Probably going to happen, the impact's going to be shown in Iowa. But at the end of the day, so we're now operating in a scenario where they think control in the House is going to switch. In the Senate, probably stays with the Republicans right now. That's also a dynamic that's going forward. But this balance of power and how it affects what we're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to accomplish, very important. I also include this slide. How many people in the room have read first of all, how many people in the room have heard of Project 2025? Virtually everybody. How many people in the room have actually downloaded it and read it? It's 1,000 pages. Most of it. How many people have read the 40 pages that are applicable to agriculture? Anybody? Most of it. We got one winner. Me too. If you want to know what's going to happen, read that. It's the blueprint. They probably have followed it to 45, 50, 55% so far. It's all there. It's very straightforward. They make you pay for it now, by the way. They used to be able to download it for free, but you got to pay for it. What's really important, there's two people to follow, in my mind. I got their names up here. The first one is Russell Voigt. People never heard of him. OMB, the most powerful group of people in Washington, D.C., Office of Management and Budget. They run everything. Every dollar runs through that house. Everything. He is the director. He also wrote Project 2025. Really important piece of the puzzle. Second is Stephen Miller, the Deputy Chief of Staff. I will tell you right now, everything runs through him too. So from inside Washington perspective, if you want to follow somebody on social media, if you want to figure out what's going on, follow those two cats. Pretty good idea what's going to go on. Last piece, I'll bring up my Freedom Caucus friends again, because they have to be dealt with in some form or fashion. And as we walk through this presentation, you're going to realize why you have to deal with these guys. Okay, now we're going to talk about the reality. So you understand what the balance of power looks like. There's an election coming up. You understand the blueprint that they're working from. Now let's talk about what's changed. Let's jump down to the second line. Really important. How many people have looked at this document that's in the second line? And it's not a quiz. It's just a functional reality. I've never seen this before. In all my 40-some years in Washington, D.C., I've never seen the National Security Strategy be published. They published it. And what it said in that National Security Strategy that they published in December, just last month, is that we're changing as a country. We're changing everything we've done. We used to be a global player. Everything was done on a global basis. And we're saying, we're coming back home. America first, number one, and we're going to look at this hemisphere, the Western Hemisphere, number two. Now think about all the common things that are happening in the media today, in the news that you're hearing. Think about the Western Hemisphere. Do you understand what's going on? They're acting on what they said they were going to do. Just like Project 2025, this administration's acting on this national security strategy. They've told the Europeans, they've told the rest of the world, we're going to focus on the Western Hemisphere. We're going to control it. You ought to all be asking yourself the question, don't we operate all around the world? Really good question to ask yourself. They want to be the preeminent power. They're moving away from all the things, these institutions that we have used since World War II to get to where we are. They're walking away from most of them. Those are long-term implications for everybody in the room, and you're going to have to figure out how to live in the new world. That new world is this new world order. It applies to everybody in this room. It applies to agriculture in particular, and applies to the pork industry in particular. But they're doing something that is interesting. And I'm not going to talk about it today. We can talk about it another time. But they're using a stick approach. They're putting the hammer down, let me tell you. You all sort pigs most of the time for your living. I understand about 2x4s, okay? I grew up on a farm. We had sows. Some of them didn't operate very well. Sometimes 2x4s were necessary, all right? They're using a frickin' 2x4 on everything. By comparison, the Chinese are using carrots. I'm going to use them as an example. They're building ports in Brazil. They're building ports in Peru on the western side of South America to eliminate going through the Panama Canal, because you cut 12 days off and you don't have to work with the Americans. They have ports that are in use today. They're mega ports. And we can talk about that. But they're using a carrot approach. They're doing it not only in South America, but they're doing it in Africa and lots of other places in the world. And for agriculture, that's a big thing. I'm going to switch gears for a second. So we have, you understand the balance of power, you understand the new world order dynamics that are coming forward. Let's talk about how they're managing this. This is also critically important. How many people have heard about populism? Great. How many people have read anything about populism? Because populism has a history in agriculture. But how many people have read about it and how it applies? Make no mistake, the United States today is being managed from a populist political perspective. A conservative populist political perspective, but make no mistake that that's what we're doing. It has huge implications. Understand of how we got here. So the president, once again, I'm not picking sides. I'm just trying to tell you what the reality situation is here. The president, he wants to represent the common man versus the elite. Does it sound ring true on anything I'm saying here? Anti-establishment. Power and interest of the ordinary citizens, often talking about radical reforms. Any of this sound familiar? Most importantly, it's found in both the left and the right. Almost exclusively in the past, it has been on the left in the United States. It is now on the right in the United States. Now, populism's been around for a long time. This chart's back to 1900. But I want to show you, and I want you to look at this chart. Because look at the countries on the left-hand side. This is not my chart. This is done by people who study this stuff all the time. Those are all the countries that they have been identified that have had populist leaders, left or right, over the years. Look on the right-hand side who those leaders are. There's some scary shit on there, okay? Secondly, there's a country that's not on this list right now, should be, is Japan. Japan has a new populist leader, brand new prime minister, happens to be the first woman in Japan. I was in Japan last week, by the way, and I will tell you that she is operating Japan just like we are here. She's a President Trump clone, but operating the country in the exact same way. But understand that this has a history, understand exactly what it means, and what it means for agriculture and for the pork industry. I'm going to move off of this, but this ties into everything else I'm going to talk into. If you actually read about this and understand it, understand the political system from a policy perspective, a political system, and where we're going, we have a very long history here. There's a lot of really important takeaways as you think about how to position yourselves and the industry going forward. Agriculture almost is the center of it. And think about what we're talking about today. What are we talking about? We're talking about high prices, right? In large part. We're talking about affordability in large part. We're talking about big corporate players for most part. All these things fit together. Think about how it ties to the industry. But at the end of the day, what's really important when you read about this and understand it is that it's very economically costly to get out of. Somebody has to unwind this at some point in time. It is very politically disruptive. If you think that we are not in a dysfunctional political system and state right now, then you're kidding yourself. We're not being served well on any front. And at the end of the day, this is my take, this is my edit, is that populist policies almost always end poorly. Almost always end poorly. Because at the end of the day, you still need investment. You still need all kinds of other economic activities to go forward. You can't only invest in yourself. You can't be isolationist. You cannot turn inward, and you cannot be isolationist. That's what this says. That's what this says. You're now exporting 25 to 30% of your production. Let me put my hand up and say, in 1990, when Russ Sanders, you guys may, some of you old enough to remember, Russ hired me to build a trade program for the pork industry. We were the second largest importer in the world, 1990. Second only to Japan. Today, you're the largest exporter in the world in real terms. All right? At that time, you were exporting about 0.5% of your production. You had 85 million pigs, about 82, I think. And today, you're at 130 million, and you're doing 25 to 30% of your production, depending on the year. This is relatively important for that. This is relatively important for that. It doesn't only apply to the pork industry, though, because American agriculture exports about 30% of our production, on average, across the board. This is a problem for everybody. If we're going to look in the Western Hemisphere, we're going to look inwardly, and we're going to burn every bridge we have, we've got to find another way. All right, so we're going to get into the meat of this. So I start off with tariffs because the president loves tariffs. Not picking sides, just telling you. This is his favorite word. This is his favorite thing. He loves tariffs. Tariffs have a very long history in this country, hugely long history. Few things I want you to look at on this chart. Number one, effective tariff rates. Right now, we're at 17.9%. 17.9%. That's the effective tariff rate. Yesterday, he said he was going to put 200% tariffs on the Europeans. We'll see what happens. But at the end of the day, we're right here, 17.9%. Anybody remember what happened right here? What happened right there? There you go. Ding, 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 had the depression. Yep. I'm not saying we're going to have a depression. I'm just saying we're getting perilously close to challenging that theory again, however. Really important to understand exactly what these tariffs mean. They have a price. The importer pays the tariff. The exporter doesn't pay the tariff. Foreign countries don't pay the tariff. The importer pays the tariff. So far, a lot of people have been trying to hide the cheese. Hiding the cheese is going to go away. We're going to talk about it in just a little bit with regard to what the Supreme Court's doing and other things. But at the end of the day, you need to think about what this means, okay? Because this means a lot. Because someone, at the end of the day, has to pay the price. At the end of the day, it's going to be all you. As a consumer, it's going to be you. Or on your exports, it's going to be you. One way or the other, you're going to pay. Here's the second huge couple. A couple of my former colleagues are in the back of the room, and they know that I used to say, there is a dead moose in the room, okay? There is a dead moose in the room, and we're avoiding the dead moose in the room. Here's your second dead moose right here. We have no fiscal discipline in this country. We're going to pay the price for that too. But this is going to lead to all kinds of problems for us. But today we have $38 trillion, and I'm probably being generous, and it's growing exponentially. We're on a completely unsustainable path. Your members of Congress, they have failed you. Absolutely, unequivocally failed you, because they have not kept their spending in check. And so as a result, the implications for our optionality, our respective optionality, is going to go away. And the implications for us are going to be very significant. And what it looks like is this on a chart, and then we're going to go one step further. How do you read this mess? Well, that's imports, that's exports, that's deficit, that's surplus. This is just for agriculture, okay? That's how you read this chart. Anything jump out at you here? Here's the two things that jump out at me. Pretty definitive trend line, right? What happened in January 2016? Anybody have a guess? President Trump won his first term. It's when he was sworn in. Is there a trend here? There's a trend here. I'm going to answer the question for you. All right? He started tariffs then. We're living that reality now, and we're continuing. We've got to figure out how to turn this around. Got to figure out how to turn this around. And there's a lot of answers here, and I know the administration would say to me, well, we're importing lots of fruits and vegetables and other high-priced goods, and I say, bullshit. We're not exporting enough. We've broken all of the relationships with all of our colleagues all around the world. We're having a very difficult time. That issue right there is one for all of us in this room, corn, soybeans, pork, anybody, we got to solve. We got to correct. And the trends aren't favorable. Going back to the deficit for just a second. So we're paying $1 trillion a year just in interest. $1 trillion a year in interest right now. More importantly, it's the second largest expenditure, in the federal government behind defense spending. And if you really don't want to sleep tonight, go look at the math from the GAO and others that do this work, Congressional Budget Office, what this looks like going forward. It will be our single largest expenditure if we don't get this under control. So when the president says, once again, I'm not picking sides. I work for a Republican member of Congress. I'm a registered Republican, okay? This is hard for me to say. When the president says we're going to pay for our deficit with tariffs, we've collected $178 billion. This is in the fiscal year since he took office, January to September. You can look it up. It keeps the running total. $178 billion. Our single largest month revenue generated from tariffs prior was $80 billion, just so you know, put it in context. So twice as much as normal. I'll give them credit for that. Our deficit for fiscal year 25, October 1st, September 30th, that we're just closed, was $1.865 trillion. I don't really good on the math, but I don't think those two things offset each other. So when he says this, I'm just telling you that we're not going to work our way out of this by putting on tariffs, because those are the reaction numbers. But the number to take away here is that we paid $1 trillion in interest. Okay, now we're going to get into the things that probably are really important for you. That's the backstop. We understand kind of the dynamics, how to look at this. And then when he talks about trade deals, and once again, this is something that I did a lot of people do, We don't have a mechanism to put a trade agreement in place today. The Trade Promotion Authority, TPA, is authorized by Congress. It expired in 2021. Unconscionable. But it's how you negotiate a trade agreement, because when you negotiate a trade agreement with congressional authority, then you have to bring the agreement back and it has to be ratified by Congress. All of a sudden, then you have an agreement that has teeth, that has enforcement mechanisms, that has reporting requirements, has oversight requirements. Those are things like the North American Free Trade Agreement, which is now USMCA, and a range of others that have those sorts of teeth involved with them. Every other country in the world operates that way. Why aren't we? Because without it, you have an agreement, you have a handshake, you have a promise. They aren't worth shit. Because when you leave office, there's nothing. It's like having dentures. Hard to eat sweet corn with dentures. Even harder without dentures. But I'll tell you right now, is that right now, everything that's being talked about are things that don't work very well. They have a long history of failure. And these agreements, these handshakes, these deals, they don't work. And so I'd put no stock into it. Let me give you an example. So in the first Trump administration, we negotiated an awful lot of trade deals with the Chinese, right? Terry Branstad, former governor, was the ambassador. Highly touted. Phase 1 and Phase 2, two trade agreements that were put together. In Phase 1, the Chinese bought 80% of their commitments. Anybody want to venture a guess what they bought in Phase 2? 0. 0. Why? The president wasn't in office. So when you think about the negotiations, you think about the conversations of going back to the Chinese, that's a classic example of an agreement. Let me give you another classic example. It's a little bit out of date today because of what's going on with regard to Greenland and the European Union and a number of other things. But most recently, there was an announcement that we were going to get access to the UK, United Kingdom, right? And it was going to be for a whole range of products. Ethanol was going to be one, pork was on the list, but most importantly, beef was on the list. But the fact that pork and beef was on the list is something that I know an awful lot about. The Europeans have a little thing called, they don't like hormones. Got a hormone ban, all right? About 98.7% or 98.9% of all the beef in the United States is treated with hormones. Even though they are pituitary gland extracts and they are not hormones, Europeans still don't allow their entry into the European Union. Well, the UK, while not part of the European Union, still adheres to that same standard. So, got a hormone ban. So, most of the beef industry can't get in there. So, that's ticker number one. You got a hormone ban, most people can't get in. Number two is there's something called the Third Country Meat Directive. Europeans are masters. They have figured out how to use the Third Country Meat Directive, a non-tariff trade barrier on the color of the walls and the, you can't imagine how bad it is. We can't put product in the European Union because of that, okay? Well, that hasn't changed. That phytosanitary standard has not changed. So we have a beef ban, a hormone ban, we got the Third Country Meat Directive, and then you have to have somebody who's willing to participate with you. So what I'm trying to tell you is that we're not going to put any beef into the UK. Now, when the British come to the United States, the first place they want to go is a steakhouse, guaranteed, okay, and every other European, but you're still not going to export there. So these deals don't solve the underlying problems of international trade. And until they do, I wouldn't put any stock into them. So your organization, your association, this is the things they work on every day to get access, whether it's Japan, whether it's Korea, whether it's China, whether it's Mexico, on all of these factors. But they're all predicated, as a rule of thumb, on agreements that have been ratified by Congress or have some sort of structure. These agreements do not. So yesterday, everybody was expecting the Supreme Court was going to issue a ruling with regard to IEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. that was what was used to impose all the tariffs. That didn't happen, so we're not going to see anything now until February. February 20th would be the first time, according to their own schedule, that we're going to see that. But the important thing is this, and this is where it gets really messy. One, the importers of record, and that's why everybody's suing the administration now. They want to be on record as being the importer of record so that they can get some of their, or all of their $178 billion back. So we can't use that money for anything else, or shouldn't be, because there's a very good chance you're going to have to pay some of it back. I think the Supreme Court's going to rule that that's unconstitutional. I mean, if you listen to what they said in the hearing, they were highly skeptical. Highly, highly, highly skeptical. So I'm expecting that it's going to be ruled unconstitutional. Well, the administration's made it very clear they're going to use other tools. They're going to impose an across-the-board 10% tariff on everybody. Okay? What's that mean for the pork industry? What's that mean for agriculture? It means a lot, because it means if you're going to impose a 10% tariff on everybody, everybody's going to retaliate against you. Guaranteed. And the first place they're going to retaliate? Agriculture. Why? Why do they retaliate on agriculture? Probably a really important question that I take for granted. It's because of the United States Senate. Why is that? Because we have 2 senators in every state. Agriculture is really important in the majority of those states. And so when they look at the United States, and they look at the United States Senate from a political perspective, and they look at the Senate Finance Committee, they look at the Senate Finance Committee and they realize that the top Republicans, every Republican, in fact, on the Senate Finance Committee, is from an ag state. They realize that John Thune, the majority leader of the United States Senate, is from South Dakota. And they're like, what do they have in South Dakota? Agriculture, ding, 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 ding. I think we'll impose tariffs on those products and give them a little gift. It's leverage. Counting votes. And that's why agriculture is always the tip of the spear in these deals. Every time. Count on it. So I'm expecting that they will use other authorities, but the important piece of the puzzle, tariffs are not going to go away for a while. Not in this administration. They're going to use them. They're going to double down on them. And so you're going to have to figure out what that means of how those 25 to 30% of your production is going to go to foreign countries under that light of reality. Very significant sort of problem to face. This is one of my favorite charts. It's busy as hell, but you get the idea. So if I'm on your side of the table, I am right now, this is how you read this chart. This is top export markets across the entire paradigm of all products in the United States. But you think about that chart that we just looked at of imports and exports. This is where we export products. So when you think about the marketplace, think about it in the context of this chart. This tells you, without all the other bullshit that you can put on a piece of paper and numbers, Mexico and Canada are our 2 largest export trading partners. Mexico and Canada are our 2 largest export trading partners. Keep that in mind. China, the Dutch, United Kingdom, Germany, Japan, the blocks are by size on an equivalent basis. Think about all this in your mind. If you understand this chart, you understand exactly where you should be paying attention, okay? And who we piss off, what the implications are. And we're in the process of pissing a lot of people off, just so you know. The European Union is the largest market in total, just so you know, but I don't think of it that way because the Europeans we all fled from there for a reason. But you get an idea. You have to think about it as country specific. You can't think about it as the European Union by itself. You have to think about it country specific because that's exactly how it's put together. But keep that chart in the back of your mind. So just remember, Mexico and Canada, 2 largest trading partners. This is what the president said last week. I don't even think about USMCA, U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. It's his agreement. He negotiated in his other term. It's the old NAFTA. It's his agreement. Those are our 2 largest trading partners. I want to see Canada and Mexico do well, but the problem is we don't need their product. Maybe true. We sure as hell need their market. particularly on pork, particularly in Mexico. It's up for review in July of this year. He's made it very clear he doesn't want to do it. And what did the Canadian Prime Minister do last week? He went to China. He signed a deal in China. He's basically saying, for all of us in this room, I don't like to say this, this is a problem, okay? Because the Canadians have options, Mexicans have options. If I put on my farm cap, we don't have options. Not good ones. Because I have corn to sell. I didn't market it very well last year, and so I have a lot of old crop corn to sell. Let me switch gears again. We haven't even talked about this. How many people know what BRICS is? Either you're lying or this is the most educated group I've ever talked to in my life, okay? And I hope it's the latter, but I think it is. BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and South Africa, excuse me. Plus there's 9 other players. This is the counter. This is what fills the vacuum when we decide to pull back. This is the elephant. This is the dead moose times 10. Here it is. I didn't really think, I thought, why the hell South Africa? And then I actually spent some time, got to some smart people, and realized that those other countries are going to go to Africa. They're going to build out Africa. I should have figured it out, but that's their entree. But more importantly, when you think about Brazil, Russia, India, and China, so you have the 2 largest populated countries in the world. You have energy, and you have agricultural production. There's your trifecta, all in one little thing. Their whole point, you see what they're doing with regard to the size and so forth, but it ties agricultural production at large scale with energy, the Russians, with population, with demand. With the idea that you can eliminate or change the importance of the United States and the dollar. That's their agenda. But you see what the Brazilians are doing, and I put this on here because most people, how many people in the room have been to Brazil? Seriously, put it up. It's nothing to be, if you are, put your hand up high because you should be proud of it. Then you know it's an oh shit, okay? I don't need to tell you, oh shit. It's Brazil. It's big. Gonna get bigger, okay? Leading exporter of beef, of soybeans, soybean meal, poultry, sugar, cotton, coffee, orange juice, and tobacco. And this year, they're number 3 in pork, okay? They're gonna be number 1. They're gonna be number 1. They're real. This is our single largest threat. We have to think about it, how we're gonna position ourselves, how we're gonna manage that. Doesn't mean we can't, just means that you have to. But this is the single largest threat to U.S. agricultural trade that we have. It's in context of everything else that's going on, but this is real. This is real. Think about it. They haven't been around very long either. So I learn I'm a visual learner, as you probably figured out from this presentation. And if the charts suck, they're mine, and I'm sorry because I don't know how to do anything else. 2 things to take off. So look on this chart. Remember the day I told you about, 2016? I'm not real smart, but I'm pretty sure that that reaction was purposeful. So we're now dealing with this reality. Brazil, the dominant player in soybean production, they're going to add 4.2 million acres this year, getting ready to harvest some of those soybeans right now. Put this into context. Iowa produced 9.6 million acres of soybeans last year. 9.6. They're adding an Iowa every 2 years. You all can clap if you want. The reality of the situation is that that engine is still growing. That engine is still growing. It's going to continue to grow. They're using all of our technology, all of our equipment, all of our capital. Going to continue to grow. You're going to have to deal with this in some form or some fashion. But that is enabled by BRICS. It's going to be further enabled by what we're doing in this country today. And I mean today. So here's another time bomb for you. You've been following this? So last Saturday, the European Union and the Mercosur countries are Brazil, Argentina, the country we just bailed out, by the way, Uruguay, Bolivia, and Paraguay. They decided a trade agreement. Those trade agreements to reduce tariffs, those trade agreements to really focus on market access into these two reciprocal countries, dynamics. Lots of fights going on about that. We'll talk about that in just a second. But once again, they're focusing on things on the bottom: beef, poultry, soybeans, sugar, and rice. It's another enabler. Took 25 years to negotiate, but most importantly, it's a ratified agreement. It's a ratified agreement. It's got teeth. It's going to be real. You're not going to get rid of it. You're going to have to work around it. We don't have a relationship like this with the European Union, even though particularly on agriculture. And we haven't tried. And we don't have the mechanism to have one today. So they do. And they did this in a direct response to what we're doing right now. Guaranteed. Look at the piece on the bottom, too. The UK left the European Union a while back, called Brexit. They're trying to get back in. They're trying to get back in. And you would think the United States would be reaching out to the UK and saying, want to be our friend? And I think it was crickets. So it's a problem. So this is last week. Good use of tractors. Protesting all over, particularly in Belgium, and in France and in Germany. And at the end of the day, not going to matter. Not going to matter. The Common Ag Policy, just so you know, they're living some of the same dynamics we're living here, but in a different way. The Common Ag Policy, the CAP, is the single largest budget item in the European Union. Way ahead of military, okay? So ours is military and then interest, theirs is the CAP. That's why you can be a French farmer, have 10 acres and a Mercedes, legally. Well, they're gonna change that. That's what's going on. They've been changing it, they're really gonna change it. And I don't know who was the smart guy who used Mercosur, but Southern Common Market. That's what it means in Spanish. Some of you guys that are Spanish may have better interpretation than me, because my Spanish sucks, but I'm pretty sure that's what it means. But they want to counter the United States. They want to counter China. They want to really figure out how to reduce tariffs. They want to be more competitive. And they want a reliable supplier. And that's why they're going to South America. And they have a long-term set of rules that go with it. Switching gears again, because it all fits together now. And at the end of the day, you're going to go, I think I got what he was trying to accomplish. So one of the very first pieces of legislation that this administration passed, Congress passed, was called the One Big Beautiful Bill. In that One Big Beautiful Bill, there's some pretty profound tax provisions for agriculture. I give them credit for that. Very important, from estate taxes to accelerated depreciation, range of other things. But what they also did was this. They decided to blow up the Farm Bill. And they decided to put in that legislation two things. One is they cut SNAP program, Food and Nutrition Program, by $200 billion over 10 years, or $20 billion a year. I'm telling you, that was like pulling the pin on the grenade, dropping the pin, turning off the lights, and closing the door in Washington, D.C. Why? Because in the House of Representatives, you have to have urban votes to pass a piece of legislation. You have to have them. If you don't have them, you have no chance. You can pass it in the Senate. You can't pass it in the House. That's how you get urban votes. Yes, program needs to be reformed. Yes, maybe you were spending too much money. That's probably all true, but you didn't need to do this. At the same time, they increased funding. They increased funding for certain farm programs, particularly reference prices, by $65 billion or $6.5 billion a year. So if you really want to piss off urban members of the House of Representatives, this is how you do it. And they've done it. They've done it. But what they've also done in this process, just so you know, is that they've put this at risk now. They put this at risk now. And so when you think about risk mitigation, when you think about payment limits, you think about all these things that are really important for us, particularly right now on low prices, they put that in a piece of legislation that is not going to be under the same rules of congressional oversight as you see with the Farm Bill. And so keep this in mind as you think about this. So right now, politicians, leadership saying we're going to do a farm bill. They're calling it the skinny farm bill, okay? And they say they're going to do it, mark something up. I don't doubt they'll mark something up. And I've been telling people, you can ask those who hear me, we're never going to do a farm bill again. And I told them we were never going to do a farm bill when they said they're going to do a farm bill. It expired in 2023, and we've extended it a number of times, different administrations, and we haven't been able to get it done. Why? Because there's no agreement. And so we're not going to have an agreement now. So with one big, beautiful bill behind us, we have a very serious challenge. We're not going to do a farm bill. I don't know how we're going to get these things done with these other titles that are really important, like research, like conservation, like international, like food safety. I don't know how they're going to get done. They can't run independently. I don't know. I have no idea. Hope somebody has an idea. They say they're going to do a farm bill. They'll get it out of the House Ag Committee on a party line vote. It will never get off the floor. It'll never get to the Senate. If it ever got to the Senate, it'd still have to get over the 60-vote hurdle on filibuster. Zero chance. Not many people are going to tell you that. I'm telling you, zero chance, okay? So we have to figure that out. As an industry, as agriculture, as land-grant universities, we got to figure this out. How we're going to go forward now. Today, right before I walked up here, so there's been a lot of talk about E15. You guys have all heard about E15 on ethanol. There was a lot of talk about another bailout, another $15 billion bailout, right? Did you hear about this? So they're working on something called appropriations bills in Congress at the moment. They've passed 3. One of them happens to be for agriculture. They now have 9 remaining, and they've now come to an agreement on the other 9. They're going to package them up, pass them, send it to the president for signature, which will fund the government till September 30th. What they didn't put in, as of when I walked up here, is they stripped out E15. They did not put in the $15 billion either. I say that because it should give you kind of an idea in the back of your mind of, there's an election coming up. We got financial troubles in American agriculture. This is a really important base for the administration and for the Republicans, and why can't we get this done? Well, that's a really good question. Because if it doesn't get in that language, there's no other vehicle. There's no other vehicle. So at the end of the day, we have a real serious problem. It's what I've kind of talked about, but it's what you have to think about as you navigate the minefield now going forward. The Urban-Rural Coalition, it's the House, and I was there for the 1985 Farm Bill. It's the last time we did a major policy change. First time was after World War II, so think about that. 40 years roughly, 50 years, we did one. Bob Dole led that effort. Unfortunately, Senator Dole's not with us right now. We're now 50 years beyond that, 40 years beyond that. We should be doing something profound right now with regard to farm policy, everybody in this room could figure out all the things we probably need to be doing, we're not going to do it. There's not a chance to do it. So you're going to have to figure that out yourself, because I don't think Congress is going to help you here. I really don't. The last piece is this. There's no chance, unless we have an extraordinary, extraordinary, extraordinary crisis, to put something on the floor of the House and pass it. And I don't want to be in that extraordinary crisis, because it means there's a lot of other bad stuff that's occurred. Now here's an oh shit for you. So I put this list up together with regard to what's going on. So these are the realities that we're now facing. Some of it's related to the administration, some of it's just what's happening out there. So free from, take your pick. Sugar-free, reduce salt, gluten-free, reduce fat, free of fat. It's a $100 billion global market. It's growing like exponentially, okay? I really didn't know much about it until I started looking into it. I can just tell you, it's a place where the pork industry and agriculture has to pay a lot of attention. GLP-1. 5 to 11% drop in household grocery spending. Do you have any idea what that means? It's profound. Some sectors down 25 to 30% in the category because of this. We have to adapt to that. Ultra-processed foods. 50% of all the calories in the United States come from ultra-processed foods. However, it's not defined. Here's a place for you to define what that means, because it means for some people X, for other people Y. For agriculture, for the food business, for the pork industry, you've got to be on top of all these things and participating in some form. Because ultra-processed foods, over the next 3 years, and as of yesterday, we were 1 year into this administration, over the next 3 years, are going to go away. They're going to go away. Last, MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. back in the 1990s and I don't like each other, okay? He was in Storm Lake, Iowa with me when I was CEO of the pork industry, and let's just say that we're not sharing Christmas cards. He said some weird shit, I probably said some weird shit, but at the end of the day, he's not a good guy, okay? He probably thinks the same of me. When you don't have science, and this industry depends on science, you don't have any future. You don't have any certainty, because I don't know what you're going to use. Really important concept. So this is an important issue that you're going to have to also figure back on. But at the end of the day, if you follow what they do at all, and I'm not on social media, but they have some hellish good influencers, because they tell you what you're supposed to put in your hair. It didn't work for me, okay? But they have some really good influencers that this is good, this isn't good, this is bad. Somehow, we have, as an industry, both pork industry and agriculture, you're going to have to get on top of this, because where this is going is not positive. Lastly, seed oils. I have all my kids' friends tell me, I don't know what the hell, you can't eat these seed oils. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, oh no, they're bad for you. And so we've lost that battle as of right now. And you think about the fact that, just to take this right here, Tyson Foods, anybody from Tyson, work for Tyson in the room? Good. Tyson eliminated high fructose corn syrup from all their products. Tyson. Others have too. I'm just picking on them today. So we're in Iowa. So I figured I'd talk about ethanol. Pork industry used to hate ethanol. Now they love ethanol because of corn gluten feed, corn gluten meal. Ethanol, 6 out of every 10 bushels of corn goes into ethanol in Iowa. 4.5, 4.5 out of every 10 nationally. Really important issue, right? Well, this is what's happening in ethanol. Gasoline demand's falling, 6.3% since 2020. You're not going to turn that around. It's going to continue, all right? This trend's done. This is going to happen. There's going to be more EVs. There's going to be more, hybrids. Demand's just changing. absolutely unequivocally changing. So that demand's going to continue to diminish. Production is 17.2 billion gallons. You just heard me talk about the fact that E15 may not happen. If it doesn't happen, would have really been beneficial. Wasn't the sword, but it would have been really beneficial. But if you think about gas demand, it's a 900 million gallon reduction just in 6 years. That's the reality of the situation. They have to find a new molecule or a new market. And here's the problem. Here's the problem, and I actually serve on an ethanol board. Here's the problem, is that we're now dependent on exports for ethanol. We're now depending on exports for ethanol. What's the number one export market for ethanol? Canada. So let's piss them off some more and see whether or not they can go somewhere else or do something else. After that, the UK. After that, India. Boy, I don't think I'd go all in. At the end of the day, you need a new molecule. What do I mean by that? So Rio Tinto and Amazon, two small, Rio Tinto is the largest mining company in the world. Amazon, they're on your doorstep right now. They have decided, they've captured a new technology to extract copper out of tailings. And they're using a combination of acid and bacteria. And they're now using that process to produce copper for Amazon's data centers. That's a new molecule. If you can get Rio Tinto and Amazon to come together to do that, we need to be thinking as agriculture about the exact same thing. How the heck do we change the entire paradigm so of these mountains and mountains of tailings from mining copper in the past? They're now going back to them and exploring them and actually going to extract copper much cheaper, much faster, and control the entire process. Agriculture, in the United States, our land grant, Dr. Ross is here, thank you, sir. It needs to figure this out with us, and we need to work with them. Prop 12. I got in trouble for this because I have a very strong opinion on Prop 12, but I can't say it. All I'll tell you is that Prop 12 is a real problem for the industry, and all I'll tell you is this, is that the only way to overturn the Supreme Court decision is to have Congress do it. The only way to do it, okay? Well, right now there's over 200 members of Congress. Remember the balance of power thing I started with? There's 200 members of Congress who are publicly opposing the legislative solution to overturning it. 200. I can do that math. Pretty good at that. So it's going to be very difficult to overturn. Not that you shouldn't try, but you're going to have other industries that are gored like you are. Supreme Court made a bad decision, for sure. However, it doesn't change the reality. So you have to figure out how to work around it now, in my view. All right. I'm going to close this up and let you guys attack me. Other challenges and realities to consider. AI. Okay? It's coming. Trains left the station. We're going to talk about it. Get on that. Get ahead of that train. Get ahead of that train. It is coming. I don't know shit about it, but I will tell you right now, it's coming, and it's going to change everything. The activists, in this period of time that we're living in right now, we haven't heard much from them. Believe me, they're waiting. Believe me, they're amassing dollars, they're amassing efforts. They're the ones who gave you Prop 12. They're planning some other surprises, guaranteed. They are coming for agriculture because they know you're vulnerable. Water and water quality. I cannot emphasize this enough. If there was one issue that I would say the limiting factor of American agriculture, it's water. And that means water quality. And if you think about your competition with data centers for water and agriculture for water, and if you've been following what's happening in water in the West, you'll understand it's a very big deal. Agriculture used to be the driver in the West. They owned all of the water. Today, they're third. It's industry first, it's people second, agriculture third. That's a paradigm shift. Water. Labor and immigration, once again, you know what? This is the sexiest issue in politics today. You got people running, think they're going to be the president of the United States in 2028 on this issue right here. You're not going to get any salvation. If you do, something else has occurred. I'm really worried about what the federal government may or may not do in this new paradigm, this new order that we're in on food. This is a really important sector. This is one that is involved with inflation and affordability, all the things that the country's having an issue with. So this is a place they're going to pay attention. Once again, you've got to get ahead of that, think about that, be able to manage that. We have withdrawn from climate initiatives, and I know some in the room think it's bullshit. The rest of the world doesn't. Corporations don't, consumers don't. And so at the end of the day, you've got to figure out what role you're going to play here. What role are you going to play here on climate, on carbon, on water, on nitrogen, on nutrients? Set your own rules, but play. So when I put this together, I said, you know, you're negative as all get out, even by my standards. I said, so maybe I should put some things on the paper that are opportunities. And I'm a huge optimist, by the way. Just for people who know me, I always try to look around the corner. I always try to think about where that next opportunity is as someone who's been pretty entrepreneurial and doing things. And so this is my list. It's not comprehensive, it's not exhaustive, but it's food for thought. Get ahead of the inevitability of AI. Define it, engage it, use it to your benefit. But here's what I'd really do. All these players need agriculture. Get them to help you. I'm talking Microsoft and Amazon and all the other players. Just like Amazon's working with Rio Tinto, the largest miner in the world, I'm guessing they'll work with agriculture if you went to them. Secondly, pork's still the meat of choice in the world. Take advantage of it. I'm sorry, I'm going to be critical. I don't think you do. I think you get better at it, a lot better at it. Listen, you live in a time where protein, more protein's better protein, better protein's more protein's better protein. What's a damn pork chop? Protein. I don't see you taking advantage of it. I grew up on a farm where we fed a lot of cattle and pigs. I know the beef guys extremely well. If you can't beat the beef guys, holy shit. I would encourage you, listen, I spent a lot of time overseas. I spent a lot of time in smoke-filled rooms with some knuckleheads. You got to double down on your approach and how you're going to deal with international markets. You have to export. You have to export. You have got to figure out a solution for 25% of your production or more, because you probably can do it better than a lot of other people. But you got to figure out in the world you live in today, the new world order that we're in, how to get into these markets, stay into these markets. You got to figure it out. There's ways. You got to work on some new products. I just got back from Japan. My pork consumption in Japan is over the roof because you've ever had pork tonkatsu in Japan? It's the best frickin' thing in the world, okay? It's a pork loin that's been battered. It's got panko breading on it. It's deep fried with a little bit of cabbage and plum sauce. I'm telling you, you could eat it all day long, okay? Why don't you just put that out there on McDonald's? Somebody's going to say, I want some pork tonkatsu. That's my idea for a new product. Only one I got. You got to be better than Brazil. They're coming. Just be better than them. You got to stay in the USMCA. You've got to figure out, despite what the president says, you got to figure this out. This last one is that there is the new world order. I don't want to over-exaggerate it. I don't want to overdo anything. I'm just telling you, it's here. We're in it. Done. You're not going to change it. So better take advantage of it because there's a lot of opportunities. Change. This industry has been very resilient to change. You have to figure out now how to change again. And you're going to have to adapt, and pivot. One of the things when you start a company is you have to pivot 27 times and adapt. and I've started a number of companies, including a couple that went public. I will tell you what, that's the key thing. Hard to do in agriculture, hard to do in the pork industry, but you got to figure it out. My last thing to leave you with. This is what the Secretary said a few months ago, and it struck me as I wanted to share with you, because I would hold her to this. I would hold her to this. I don't know what her definition of golden age is. I'm approaching the golden age, I'm pretty sure. But at the end of the day, this is something that you've got to work with her on, and this administration on, of figuring that out. Because left to their own devices, don't think you get there. With that, thank you. Apologize for the negative tone, but I appreciate the opportunity to articulate how I see the future.
Do you see a change in administration to help us to accomplish what you think we need to do to make the changes?
In part, yes, but here's the dilemma: is that we've ran people off the plank. Is the problem we have? Is that Brazil's here? Brazil's not going away. The Europeans have made a commitment with the South Americans on Mercosur. BRICS is there. So, and we've become unreliable with regard to some of the things we're doing. So we're going to have to take time and effort. Does a different administration change things? Sure. Does a different Congress potentially change things? Sure. But they have to change the right things, And right now, I would say we are a generation away from making dramatic change. Long ways. We're a long ways away. It's not overnight. I'd love to say it was. It's not. Not how the system works. It took 25 years to put together the Mercosur agreement. We have to think about it in that kind of context. Doesn't mean that we can't be really successful in the interperiods, but we have to figure out how now to re-engage. Yes.
Yeah, Al, excellent presentation. I'm trying to figure out interest rates and inflation, and I've been reading on it, and a fourth of the federal debt needs to be refinanced this year. This administration has been replacing some of the long-term federal debt with short-term. In December, they started printing money again and started buying some of this debt to lower the interest rate. So on the surface, it looks like this administration wants higher inflation and lower interest rates. You have thoughts on that?
Well, if your inflation's relatively high, your deficit narrows in their mind, okay? And if your interest rates go down, your cost of payment on your debt goes down, okay? So they see that as a double pincer opportunity. So that makes sense. The problem is they continue to spend money, okay? So there's no fiscal discipline, so they can't do that. The second piece of it, the economic elements behind it don't support that. If you absolutely go all in on tariffs, you want to see the economy slow down in this country? When they actually pass tariffs on to us, when they actually do that, it'll slow down. So I think the strategy is a flawed strategy. I'm not an economist. I'm not a central banker. I know one thing is that the path we're on, the one thing that I'm sure of, the path we're on is clearly unsustainable.
So a follow-up question, because my son's big into Bitcoin, and he's convinced that Bitcoin is the answer because the government can't debase that currency like they do the dollar. Any thoughts on Bitcoin? Will it catch on? What's your thoughts long
A couple
term?
people in the room know that my wife is a big financial services lawyer, well known, and she's a huge Bitcoin lawyer as well. And so I'm going to defer to her and ask her that question. But she would say that there's a reason why Bitcoin is gaining momentum, and I'll leave it at that because she would say that what you said with regard to fiat currency is relatively important.
Since you have a deep connection to somebody that's financially adept.
Yep. I'm married up is what I mean, okay?
Do you think the influence of the BRICS group will influence a change in the preferred currency for international trade?
I do. I think, I hate to say that the dollar's really important, but it doesn't mean that you think about who the participants are here. They play a long game. They have very deep pockets. They're very committed. And I do think that over time, there's going to be a lot of optionality with regard to what one does with regard to a default currency.
And the rest of them don't see Russia as a bad apple in the basket.
Fuck no.
Thank you. I was looking for that, Al Tank. I
No.
was wondering when he was going to come out.
They got cheap oil they're willing to sell you for cheaper, okay? No. Sorry. Oops. I was doing so good until I wasn't. So.
Okay, so many questions for you, but I'll stick to this one.
Yeah.
You said 33 seats up on the Republican side this election cycle.
Correct. No, 33 seats in the Senate. So every
Yeah.
2 years, a third of the Senate's up for
Right.
re-election. Of
Yep.
that, 22 are Republican.
Yes, okay. So given that it's an election year,
Yeah.
why would we not push as hard as possible to get all of our agriculture priorities across the finish line to get them their seats?
Ding, 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 ding. I agree with you 100%. I'm just telling you right now, yep. You need to take them out somewhere behind the barn and do an education. My father was really good at it. I learned a lot in those lessons, and I'm just telling you, I think that time's coming.
Well, if y'all need some grassroots advocacy training, I'm happy to set that up for you.
It's a brilliant opportunity. I'm just telling you, your voice has got to be heard. It's probably over time, but your voice has got to be heard. And you can't be shy. In fact, less than shy.
Do we have any more questions for Al? Dean?
I think I want to ask the unspoken question so far is why does this insanity continue to happen, and how come the real people of this country how come we can't make a turn? I mean, it just seems crazy.
I'm sorry that I scoffed. So that's a great. That's the dead moose question. It's the people in this room. The answer to the question is that you all decide. All right, not for me to decide. I'm very concerned. I'm about the institution of democracy. I'm very concerned about representative governments. I'm very concerned about failure and dysfunction of Congress. And at the end of the day, the only people who make that decision change is the people in this room and all your neighbors and everybody else. And so we're the ones who enable them. We got to be the ones who disable them. Hate to be that crux, that blunt about it, but at the end of the day, it's right here. The answer's right here. Listen, everything I said to you, I didn't make up any of it. If I wrote this, you'd think I was making it up. I didn't make up any of it. It's all true. That's the problem. That's how scary this is in the context of your industry, of agriculture. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities here. There's a lot of work to be done, however.
You say we in this room, and I totally agree with that, but we in this room over the whole country have very many votes. How do we get others to see it our way?
I just think I think you got to put it's grassroots advocacy. I think you just got to. It's a ball. It's the young woman behind you who can do that. Is at the end of the day, you're going to have to figure out how to articulate, communicate, express, do all the things that are necessary, organize to be able to do what needs to be done. And it's very difficult. It's very heavy lifting, but it can be done. And at the end of the day, listen, you guys are in agriculture. We're all in agriculture. We have a preferred position. Just got to start to inform and educate people. And you've got to start small. You got to keep running. That's how I look at it. And people have to speak up. And no one's speaking up right now. They're fearing retaliation. No one's speaking up. And I'll do what I probably shouldn't do. The Iowa delegation, where are they? The Iowa congressional delegation. Okay, we're in Iowa. I own farmland in Iowa. You know, I don't vote here now, but where are they? We have really some very important, Senator Grass is very important. I know him quite well. Where is he? He doesn't have a concern here. He reads the same paper I do. He talks to the same people I do. He talks a little higher level than I do. But my point of it, he can pick up the phone and talk to the president today. He's the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, for God's sakes. He can also say no. That's putting myself out on a limb, but I will tell you, that has to happen here at some point, sooner rather than later. Any other depressing comments?
I am gonna.
Mr. Kearns is in the back. I got to take his because he always gives me shit about
This is
everything.
our last question, and
Okay,
then
good.
we'll wrap her up.
Al, you've
Yep.
been in this business for a long time.
Yes, sir.
The pork business.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Over time, we have not increased pork consumption with all our expenditures and promotions and everything we've done.
Yes, sir.
What do you think can be done to do that in today's environment?
Well, first of all, on the first one, shame on us. And I have to take some responsibility in that because I was the CEO of NPC when it's a combined organization. So I have to take some responsibility. That's a problem, okay? Real problem. And the fact that you haven't gained significant market share in the last 2.5 years with current beef prices and what the poultry industry's faced, bigger problem. And I know I'm not going to make a lot of friends with the folks in some of the quarters here when I say this, but it's failure in a lot of ways. So you got to rethink everything. And I would say start at the very bottom, start over again, and rethink everything with regard to how you approach from consumers to retailers to QSRs to the international market and everybody in between. And I would do a complete autopsy and start over. Beef industry is not going to be a competitor for a long time. Nobody's keeping heifers, man. Anybody who can figure out what they're worth. So at the end of the day, you got to rethink this whole thing. And particularly in light of the fact that if you have to depend on the domestic market to absorb some of your international consumption, you better get on that pony today. My answer. And I got to take some responsibility because I was riding one of the ponies.